In early 2025, New Delhi was pointing to the Baisaran Valley as the face of a new Jammu and Kashmir. Tourism was at an all-time high, marketed as definitive proof that decades of conflict had finally given way to lasting normalcy. That projection shattered on April 22nd. In a sudden, coordinated attack, militants from the Resistance Front opened fire on the valley, killing 26 tourists in the deadliest incident of its kind in over 15 years. 3 militants carrying M4 carbines and AK-47s had infiltrated the tree line. They methodically separated the tourists, systematically interrogated them, and executed 26 people at point-blank range based on their faith. By 5:30 p.m. that day, Union Home Minister Amit Shah was on the ground in Srinagar. His arrival marked the immediate commencement of Operation Mahadev, a total military mobilization designed to find a path toward retribution. This was the highest civilian death toll since the 2008 Mumbai attacks. It forced New Delhi to confront a difficult reality. The old playbook of diplomatic protests was no longer viable, yet a full-scale nuclear escalation had to be avoided. India needed a way to impose a cost that was severe without crossing the threshold of total war. To find that leverage, India looked to the map. The Indus, Jhelum, and Chenab rivers all flow from Indian-controlled territory into the plains of Pakistan. This geography makes the downstream agricultural heartland entirely dependent on upstream flow. On April 23rd, the Indian government shifted its strategy from diplomacy to resource control. They placed the 1960 Indus Waters Treaty into abeyance, adopting a stance that blood and water cannot flow together. The first move was kinetic. India opened the gates of the Uri Dam, releasing a massive surge into the Jhelum River. The unannounced release flooded portions of Pakistan-administered Kashmir, including the city of Muzaffarabad. As the north flooded, India simultaneously began diverting water upstream. The goal was to systematically reduce the flow reaching the vital agricultural regions in the south. The impact was immediate. The Northwest Canal saw a 64% deficit, while the Dadu Canal was hit with an 82% drop in flow. 1/3 of Pakistan's population relies on these crops, and by May, the fields were beginning to parch. While Islamabad issued panicked declarations of water aggression, civilian protests broke out across the country. The message on the streets was clear: without water, there is no survival. By targeting the agricultural lifeline, India had found a way to bypass conventional military defenses. The systematic reduction of water proved more destabilizing to the state than traditional artillery fire. On May 7, the pressure shifted back to the military domain. India launched Operation Sindoor, deploying advanced Rafale fighters equipped with Scalp cruise missiles for a long-range strike deep into Pakistan. This resulted in the largest aerial duel in the region's history. 114 jets engaged in beyond visual range combat, locking onto targets and firing missiles from over 100 kilometers apart, never actually seeing their opponents. For 52 minutes, the air forces were locked in a standoff. Under this cover, IAF Rafales struck 9 specific terrorist infrastructure targets, including the Jaish-e-Mohammed headquarters in Pahalgam. Simultaneously, an Indian carrier battle group moved to the Pakistani coast. This naval presence trapped the Pakistan Navy in its ports, effectively choking the country's maritime economy while the airstrikes were underway. As the military strikes concluded, Jaishankar took the stage in the diplomatic arena. He initiated a coordinated offensive designed to frame the conflict not as a border dispute, but as a mandatory response to state-sponsored terror. At the UN and the SCO, Jaishankar leveraged a public admission by Pakistan's own defense minister, who had confessed that the country had spent decades doing the dirty work of backing terrorist proxies. This admission was used to systematically discredit every defensive argument the Pakistani delegation attempted to make. The synchronization of these military, economic, and diplomatic maneuvers left Islamabad physically crippled and without an international narrative to fall back on. Following a ceasefire on May 10th, the immediate results were visible: broken air defenses, flooded valleys in the north, and a critical water shortage in the southern farmlands. This was a departure from the historical policy of strategic restraint. In 2025, India demonstrated that it would no longer absorb proxy attacks as an acceptable cost of regional stability. This conflict introduced the physical jurisdiction doctrine. It is a shift from merely claiming territory on a map to the active enforcement of sovereignty over all claimed lands, including Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. On the ground, this translates to a permanently vigilant and fortified border posture. The period of managing a porous line has now been replaced by an absolute enforcement of physical boundaries. The policy of seeking peace through appeasement has been abandoned. In its place is a new South Asian reality, one where the cost of sponsoring terror is now calculated in blood, water, and iron.